The grandeur of the Roman Empire, its architectural marvels, its intricate legal system, and its rich cultural heritage have left an indelible mark on human history. The fall of the Roman Empire, therefore, signifies not just the end of a political entity, but the decline of a way of life that had dominated the Mediterranean world for centuries. This is the story of how Rome fell. The seeds of Rome's decline were sown long before the empire's eventual collapse. Internal strife, economic instability, and external pressures all played their part in weakening the Roman state. To understand why Rome fell, we must first understand how Rome rose. Rome's journey from a small Italian city-state to the ruler of the Mediterranean began over 2,000 years ago. Legend traces the city's founding to the year 753 BC with the story of Romulus, who founded the city and became its first king. Over the next centuries, Rome grew in power and influence. It transitioned from a monarchy to a republic in 509 BC, which laid the foundation for its future expansion. Key events included the Punic Wars against Carthage, which secured Rome's dominance in the Mediterranean. The civil wars that led to the rise of Julius Caesar and eventually Augustus as the first emperor in 27 BC under the Julio-Claudian dynasty and the Flavians. Rome reached its peak in terms of territorial size. Trajan in particular expanded the empire to its greatest extent, stretching from Britain in the northwest to Mesopotamia in the east. This vastness, however, proved to be one of Rome's first challenges. Maintaining control over such distant lands required a massive administrative and military apparatus. While Rome had a relatively advanced system of roads and infrastructure that facilitated communication and movement, the sheer distance still posed significant difficulties. Additionally, defending the borders of such a large empire was a constant drain on resources. The Roman army, renowned for its efficiency, was often called upon to quell rebellions and defend against external threats along the empire's extensive frontiers. As Rome grew, so did its diversity. The empire was a melting pot of cultures, races, and religions. While this cultural richness contributed to the empire's vibrancy, it also led to internal divisions and potential conflicts among the diverse populations under Roman rule. Managing these differences and ensuring unity proved to be a recurring challenge for Rome's rulers. Despite its challenges, the Roman Empire flourished for centuries. Its achievements in law, engineering, art, literature, and governance had a profound impact on Western civilization. However, by the 3rd century AD, the cracks in the empire's foundation began to show. One of the biggest reasons for Rome's decline was the weakness of its rulers. The early emperors like Augustus, Trajan, and Marcus Aurelius were strong and capable leaders who laid the foundation for the empire's stability and growth. However, as the centuries passed, the quality of leadership took a downturn. Many emperors were more interested in luxury, power, and personal gain than in the welfare of their subjects. Corruption became rampant, and the focus shifted from the needs of the empire to the whims of individual rulers. Frequent political assassinations, bribery, and palace intrigues became common occurrences, destabilizing the government and diverting the empire's resources away from public projects and towards self-preservation. Civil wars drained the Roman strength further, weakening it both militarily and financially. Another major factor contributing to Rome's decline was its economic woes. As the empire expanded, so did the costs of maintaining its vast territories. The expenses of running a huge bureaucracy, funding military campaigns, and providing for the empire's extensive road network and infrastructure were enormous. To meet these expenses, the government imposed heavy taxes on its citizens, which in turn crushed the poor and stifled economic activity. Trade, which had been the backbone of Rome's prosperity, slowed down due to piracy, banditry, and the instability along trade routes. Inflation soared, making basic goods and services unaffordable for many. Even the value of Roman currency declined, making it challenging for Rome to conduct business or expand its territories. In addition, farmlands were abandoned because farmers could no longer afford the costs associated with working the land, such as purchasing seeds, tools, and paying taxes. This abandonment led to food shortages as Rome, once largely self-sufficient, struggled to feed its growing population. The combination of high taxes, inflation, and unemployment made life increasingly difficult for ordinary Romans, leading to widespread poverty and social unrest. By the 3rd century AD, The situation had become dire enough for Emperor Diocletian to divide the empire into two halves: the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire. The western half centered in Rome and the eastern half centered in Constantinople. Each had their own set of rulers. This division, intended to make it easier to govern such a vast empire, actually exacerbated the issues that plagued Rome. While the East, with its wealthier population and strategic location, grew stronger over time, the West became increasingly weaker and poorer. This disparity in wealth and power highlighted the fundamental problems that were tearing the Roman Empire apart. External pressures also played a significant role in hastening Rome's demise. Throughout its history, Rome had faced numerous threats from outside invaders, but it had successfully defended its borders. However, by the 4th and 5th centuries AD, the nature of these threats changed. Germanic tribes, including the Visigoths, Vandals, Ostrogoths, and Franks, exerted increasing pressure on Rome's borders. These tribes sought to gain access to the fertile lands and resources of the Roman provinces. Initially, Rome managed to hold them back, but as the Roman army's strength declined due to internal strife and economic issues, the pressure from these tribes intensified. A major turning point came in for 10 AD when the Visigoth king Alaric invaded and sacked Rome. This event was a shock to the Roman world, as it was the first time in centuries that an enemy had penetrated Rome's defenses and looted the city. Although the sack of Rome lasted only 3 days, it had a lasting impact on the empire's prestige and security. The damage to Rome's reputation and the realization that the mighty Roman walls were not impenetrable shook the foundations of the empire. The sack served as a clear indication of how vulnerable Rome had become and what might happen again. Decades later, the Vandals, under the leadership of launched another attack on Rome in 455 AD. Their goal was to acquire slaves to sell in North Africa. They arrived in the port of Ostia, and after pillaging the surrounding countryside, they descended on Rome, looting and burning parts of the city. Once again, Rome was left reeling from the shock of being invaded and plundered. These attacks marked a low point in Rome's history and demonstrated the empire's inability to protect itself against external threats. Rome's army, once the pride of the empire, had become a shadow of its former self. Over the years, it had relied increasingly on foreign mercenaries, many of whom lacked the discipline and loyalty of Roman soldiers. These mercenaries often switched allegiances when it suited them, leaving the Romans vulnerable in times of conflict. When faced with Germanic tribes that were fierce and determined to conquer Roman lands, the Roman army was ill-prepared and The decline in military strength was a direct consequence of the empire's internal issues. Economic constraints meant that the army had to make do with fewer resources, older equipment, and insufficient training. The lack of strong central authority also affected the military's ability to function effectively. Without a capable emperor to lead and inspire the troops, the army's morale suffered, leading to defeats and further weakening the empire. By the mid-5th century, the Western Roman Empire was crumbling. Its territories were gradually slipping out of its grasp. Gaul, Spain, and Britain broke away and established their independence. The empire's final collapse was a slow and inevitable process. The last emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was merely a figurehead with real power resting in the hands of Germanic leaders. His deposition in 476 AD by the Germanic general Odoacer is often cited as the traditional date for the fall of the Western Roman Empire. With the deposition of Romulus Augustulus, the Western Roman Empire officially ceased to exist. The 1,000-year-old Roman tradition came to an end. The empire's collapse was not just a historical event, but a pivotal moment that marked the end of classical antiquity and the beginning of the Middle Ages in Europe. The fall of Rome was not caused by a single event, but rather a combination of factors. Weak and corrupt rulers, economic instability, a declining population, external pressures, and the division of the empire all played significant roles. The once great empire that had dominated the Mediterranean world for centuries disintegrated in the 5th century, giving way to new kingdoms and powers. Despite its fall, Rome's legacy lived on in its contributions to law, language, architecture, and governance, which continue to influence the world today. The story of Rome serves as a reminder that even the mightiest empires are not invincible, and that a decline can be the result of internal weaknesses rather than external threats. And that's the end of the video. If you want to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos. Thanks for watching!